The Ethereum conclave of temporal law had been arbitrating causality disputes across the coalition for 184 years. It was not a military academy, though it trained officers. It was not a court, though it issued binding rulings. It was the only institution in known space certified to adjudicate what happened when two timelines disagreed with each other, when a colony's records showed one sequence of events and a rescued convoy's black box showed another, and someone had to decide, with legal and physical authority, which version of the past was going to be allowed to stand. Its certification rate was brutal by design, 19%. Its rulings were final in every system that had signed the Coalition Causality Accord, which was every system that mattered. In 184 years, the conclave had certified 602 arbiters. Of those, only 4 had ever been granted the rarest classification on its books, anomaly certified, reserved for arbiters whose rulings had, at least once, required the conclave to formally revise its own understanding of what causality permitted. In 184 years, 7 humans had been accepted into the arbiter track, 2 had certified. None had ever come close to anomaly status. The current cohort had 1 human in it. Arbiter candidate Sira Voss was 26, raised on a relay station that orbited nothing, a research platform built in deep transit space, specifically to study signal drift across long causality chains, where the entire population measured its childhood not in years, but in drift cycles. The intervals when the station's own clocks had to be manually recalibrated against a chain of 23 other stations, because time itself did not move at quite the same rate in every corner of the network. Her application file had been read 4 times by her sponsoring arbiter, a Salith jurist named Old Speaker Ranu, and the 4th reading was the only one where the case history stopped looking like a filing error. Sira had, at 19, submitted a minority causality ruling to a regional tribunal on a border dispute, unsolicited, unpaid, filed under a station apprentice's registration number, and the tribunal had adopted it over the objections of 2 senior arbiters. The case had never been overturned. It had instead been cited 11 times since. Ranu had needed the tribunal's own archive to confirm the filing was genuine and not a clerical duplication error. It came back confirmed, time-stamped, unchanged. Sira had not mentioned any of this when she arrived at the conclave. She stepped off the transit shuttle with a single reinforced case, found her assigned chambers without asking for directions, and unpacked in under 10 minutes. On the small desk beside her cot, she placed a battered signal drift logbook, hand-annotated, non-digital, the kind of physical backup instrument that stations like hers kept because electronic timestamps could be spoofed, corrupted, or simply lost, and a jurist's ruling was only as good as the record behind it. She reported to orientation on time, gave her name and her station of origin, and when asked what she intended to specialize in, said only, disputed sequences. She did not elaborate. She was quiet in the way that made people assume there was nothing underneath it, a mistake, though a common one. Her expression did not change based on what was happening around her. It changed only based on what she was calculating, which meant that in a cohort of candidates who performed composure at each other in the dining hall, Sira simply worked. By the end of the first month, Old Speaker Ranu's private notes described her as difficult to read in a way that suggests the file was not exaggerating. The challenge came in the candidates' reading hall, 5 weeks into the term, during the evening review period when rank became informal and conversation doubled as a weapon. Candidate Threl Baxian was a Salith, senior track, ranked first in the cohort, and the only candidate in 9 years to pass the conclave's hardest practicum, the split ledger trial, without a single procedural objection lodged against his ruling. He introduced the human question the way that certain candidates introduce questions, with the timing and tone of someone who had prepared it, who had chosen this exact evening, this exact audience, deliberately. Voss. Threll set his data slate down with the care of someone building an audience, not consulting a reference. Out of curiosity, how many disputed sequences have you actually resolved? Real cases, not station drift logs. Several candidates nearby went quiet in the way that meant they were listening without appearing to. A few smiled, the category of smile that appears in rooms where a hierarchy is being enforced, and everyone present has already decided which side of it they stand on. Old speaker Ranu, seated at the far end of the hall reviewing a stack of physical files, said nothing. He had been waiting for this question since the third week, when he had pulled Sierra's full case archive on a hunch and read the citation count twice before he believed it. Sierra looked up from her logbook unhurried. "That's a fair question," she said, in the tone of someone who genuinely found it fair. "Are you asking about rulings I've filed or rulings that were adopted?" Threll's smile widened by a fraction, the fraction of someone who believes the trap has already closed. Adopted, however many that comes to. Sierra considered this for a moment, the way a person considers a question they haven't been asked directly before, not because it was difficult, but because she hadn't tallied it herself. 11, she said. The reading hall did not go loud. It went silent the way a wave stops, the tables nearest Threll first, then spreading outward until even candidates who hadn't heard the exchange found themselves setting down their slates, because the room itself had changed shape. Threll's smile didn't move immediately. It took a second to catch up to what had been said. 11 adopted rulings, he repeated. Not a question. A recalculation spoken aloud because there was nowhere else for it to go. 10 regional, 1 coalition level, Sierra said. The coalition one is still active as precedent. I didn't count the one still under appeal. Someone at a back table laughed, a short, disbelieving sound quickly smothered. Certified arbiters spent entire careers accumulating adopted rulings in single digits. A first-term candidate, 5 weeks into training, claiming 11, several filed before she had even formally enrolled. Was not a claim a room like this simply accepted from a station apprentice's own account? That's not possible through normal channels, Threll said, the prepared tone slipping into something closer to genuine confusion. Adoption requires sponsorship from a certified arbiter for anyone below candidate rank. You'd have needed sign-off 11 separate times before you ever applied here. I know the requirement, Sierra said. I met it 11 separate times. She closed her logbook, apparently considering the conversation finished, and at the far table, old speaker Ranu, still silent, still not looking up, set down the file he'd been holding. Ranu did not let it end there. The next morning's procedural seminar was moved, without announcement, to the conclave's central archive chamber. 30 candidates filed in expecting a lecture on filing standards and found instead a full projection of the tribunal's public record, restricted access annotations included, spanning the wall of the chamber floor to ceiling. Since we were discussing adopted rulings last night, Ranu said, let's discuss them properly, with the record. The projection was not dramatic the way the Academy's mock tribunals were dramatic. It was documentary, case numbers, filing dates, adoption votes broken down by tribunal member, dissent counts logged beside each ruling. Most candidates' hypothetical practicum rulings, pulled up for comparison, showed the expected pattern. Drafts, revisions, procedural notes from supervising arbiters guiding the language towards something a tribunal would accept. Sierra's 11 filings, pulled up beside them, showed no supervising arbiter listed on any of them. Case 1, Ranu said, isolating the first filing. A border drift dispute between 2 relay stations, submitted under an apprentice registration number. The tribunal's own notes record that the presiding arbiter initially rejected it as improperly filed, then read it fully, then adopted it 3-1 over 2 senior arbiters' objections. Threll, seated near the front, was not smiling. He was watching with the expression of someone doing a calculation that was clearly going to outlast the seminar period. Case 4. Ranu advanced the record. A coalition-level supply chain causality dispute, the kind of filing that typically takes a certified arbiter 18 months to prepare. Voss's version was filed 9 days after the incident, and it is still cited as the operative precedent for that category of dispute. Case 6, a dissenting minority opinion that had been formally adopted as majority ruling on appeal 2 years later, a reversal so rare the archive flagged it automatically. Case 9, a filing made entirely without digital backup, sourced from her station's physical drift logbook, after the relay station's own servers had been compromised mid-dispute. By the 7th case, the chamber had gone fully silent, not the tense silence of the reading hall the night before, but something quieter. By the 10th, Threll's slate sat untouched in front of him. Case 11, Rano said, and this was the one he had saved. A ruling on a sequence dispute involving her own relay station, filed the same week her sponsorship application to this conclave was under review. She did not disclose the conflict of interest. The tribunal reviewed it independently, found no bias in the reasoning, and adopted it anyway. He let that sit. The conclave's own admissions board did not know about this filing until I found it. It was not in her application. I have sat on this conclave for 14 years, Ranu said. I have reviewed the case histories of every candidate who has passed through these chambers in that time. No candidate, not one, certified or otherwise, has entered this program with 11 adopted rulings already standing. 10 of them were filed before she ever applied here at all. Sira did not speak during any of it. She sat near the back of the archive chamber, the drift logbook closed on her lap, and watched the record with the same steady attention she gave everything. Not satisfaction, just the expression of someone confirming that what the archive showed matched what she remembered doing. After the seminar broke, Threll lingered by the door. When he finally approached, the prepared tone from the night before was gone, replaced by something quieter and more honest. Case 1, he said. You filed as an unsponsored apprentice and the tribunal adopted it over 2 senior objections. I've spent 3 years assuming a filing like that was structurally impossible below candidate rank. It's not impossible, Sira said. It's just discouraged because most apprentices don't have a station's worth of drift data to back the reasoning. I did. When your evidence is that specific, the sponsorship requirement stops being the thing that decides whether a tribunal listens. Threll absorbed that for a long moment. I've built 3 years of practicum work around finding certified sponsors first, evidence second. You're solving the wrong bottleneck, Sira said, without any edge to it. The sponsorship isn't the obstacle, the evidence is. Get the evidence airtight enough, and the sponsorship becomes a formality nobody contests. Threll nodded slowly, not quite agreement, more the motion of someone updating a framework that had held for 3 years. The cohort's going to need a while to get used to a filing count like that existing below certification. He didn't apologize. He didn't need to. He turned and left without another word. Sira gathered her logbook from the console where she'd set it down and started toward the exit. Old speaker Ranu was waiting by the door, the archive record still glowing faintly on the chamber wall behind him. You didn't mention any of it in your application, he said. It wasn't quite a question. Nobody asked for a full filing history, just a summary. Threll's going to spend the next month rebuilding his entire practicum approach around this. A pause. So will I if I'm honest about it. Sira turned the logbook over once in her hands, battered, hand-annotated, the kind of instrument her station kept, because a timestamp only meant something if the record behind it could survive a server going dark. A ruling doesn't get adopted because of who sponsors it, she said. It gets adopted because the sequence holds up when someone tries to break it. I just stopped waiting for permission to prove that. Ranu studied her for a moment, then opened his tablet and pulled up her candidate file, the same file that had needed a 4th reading before anyone believed the case history wasn't a filing error.